Hello, Internet. Let me start off by acknowledging I know this is a long video, and I'm not expecting anyone to really watch it. In fact, I've been debating the last few days whether to even make it, or if it'd be best to keep this stuff private. Ultimately, I felt I needed to in order to get past some of the mental and emotional crap I've been dealing with lately, and time will tell whether I made the right decision. So, things aren't going particularly well for me and my family right now, and I just wanted to get some things off my chest, or out of my head, as it were. Firstly, thank you for all the kind responses to my last video. All 5 of you. You know who you are. But no, really, thank you to the people that actually reached out to me. I had been going back and forth for about a year or so now, trying to find an exit ramp for this social experiment I'd been running. And even having made that video, I was still sitting on it for like a week or two before I finally posting it. Mostly just because I was fed up with failure and insults and being ignored or mocked or slighted over it. So many things all coming to a head all at the same time, and I had reached my limit. I was just fucking done with everything. And I really meant it when I said it was the hardest thing I probably ever had to do. Second might be making this video. Pouring almost 15 years of your life into something. I'm 36 now, so that's almost half my life. Certainly almost my entire adult life, my identity wrapped up in that, to the point where, in many ways, I identify more with that character than I do with my real flesh and blood self. It's closer to who I really am as a person, or at least more interesting in my opinion. Something a lot of online creators can probably relate to. I did say I plan to do a proper post-mortem on that experiment at some point, and I still intend to as of right now. I might do a live stream, so if you have any questions you want to ask me about that or anything else, drop them in the comments and I'll sort through them when the time comes. But that term post-mortem, meaning after death, in many ways it really does feel like I've killed off a part of myself. Figurative suicide, as it were. And ironically, a lot of the intrusive suicidal thoughts I've had on and off since I was 15 seem to be going away right now. Almost as if the gods have been satisfied by my act of human sacrifice, my karmic debt having been paid. But yeah, you could make a strong case that I am now dead, and following any death there's a grieving process, which I'm still going through, still sorting out emotionally. Grieving for my own life, which is strange if you really think about it. We normally grieve others. Rarely do we ever grieve for our own lives since, well, we usually only have one. In my case, I seem to have at least 2 or 3 at this point. I talked about that in my blog post about meeting with Anita Sarkeesian, which I'm not going to get into that stuff here, but it's kind of the same thing. Like dying in a video game and having an extra life to respawn to try and overcome a difficult challenge. This video is mostly going to be me reflecting on recent events and updating you all as to where my head and heart are at the moment. And some of what I've been through in my life that has been weighing heavily on me through all of it, making everything that much more difficult. Right now I'm feeling a mix of relief, but also sadness, shame, anger, despair, being upset with myself and the world that it didn't work out nearly at all the way I'd hoped. So I'm still processing how I feel about that and what I'm going to do after death. Maybe I'll focus on game dev stuff or making tutorials over on my other channel, or turn this main channel into some mixture of a gaming/political channel like Destiny, Razorfist, or Mentist Wave. Still not sure yet. I do have a couple games from other fellow dev friends that I want to give a try. But for the immediate future, I'll be taking a break to try and rest and recover and refocus my efforts and plan out what to do going forward. Part of me is pretty fed up with politics in general at the moment, which is why I walked away from all of that, apart from one or two places in which I still feel welcomed and appreciated. A couple places in which I haven't yet given up hope that the people there care about me and that my voice makes a difference. Although I've been watching a lot of Chris Williamson and Jocko Willink lately and trying to rethink some of what I feel and take ownership of it, which isn't easy. Keyword being trying and possibly failing, since it's hard not to feel bitter, resentful, humiliated. But I'm sure I did a lot to contribute to the outcome that I will need to work on going forward. Things I might not even be aware of just yet, and having to stay humble and open-minded to change and what the spirit wants from me. But yeah, 15 years is a long time, and it was a heavy decision, one that I didn't enter lightly, and I had hoped things would have turned out differently, but what's done is done. I can't undo it now. The die is cast, and I cannot go back. I can only go forward. And honestly, as I sit here, I think the worst is probably over, and I'm strangely feeling hopeful and optimistic for once, but we'll see. People talk about a dark night of the soul. I've had a dark decade of the soul, and that's all sort of come to a climax in the last 2 weeks. I've been feeling pretty anhedonic lately, unable to feel joy or pleasure, not just from the unmasking thing, but also feeling the weight of pretty much every negative thing in my life all coming crashing down around me at once. Besides all the family issues, financial issues, relationship issues, feelings of isolation, mental health issues, crisis of confidence. None of which is helped by the fact that I've pretty much had to do everything in my life all by myself for the vast majority of it without any help from anyone, or very little compared to what I view as the average person. Someone with loving, supportive parents who actively care about what you need to prepare for in life, for example. And having learned early on that you need to put on a brave face and pretend like everything is okay, even when it's not. You can't be negative in life, or especially on the internet, because the internet is forever, and negativity spreads like a virus and repels people and makes everything infinitely worse, so you just have to grin and bear it and carry on like a good little soldier. Don't show emotion, don't show weakness, even if you are weak and helpless and vulnerable, because the world is a dark and dangerous place, and people are cold, uncaring, brutal, unforgiving savages more often than not. People will eat you alive without giving it a second thought. No one is coming to save you. No one cares about you. No one even knows you exist. No one gives a fuck about you. And fuck you for trying to be anything more than a sack of meat in a dog-eat-dog world. For trying to help people and make the world a better place. At this point, no one's really going to see this video anyway, so I don't really care about venting all this negativity publicly. Worst case, I'll just private it later or take it down and hope no one bothered to archive it, which, frankly, if anyone does see this, I think that would probably piss me off even more. It's like, no one cared who I was before I put on the mask. Except in my case, it'd be like no one cared who I was until I took off the mask. So where was everyone then when I really needed you all? When I needed your support? You were busy mocking me for using a voice mod and a cartoon avatar. That's where the fuck you were. Most of you, anyway. You seem to care more about that than anything I had to say. Which is ironic, really, since a large part of the point of all this was to try and circumvent people's obsession with identity. This social contagion, this absolute fucking sickness that seems to have plagued both left, right, and center. to remove things like race and gender from the equation and really get at the heart of the argument, about all these ideas that people claim they want to talk about but don't. Talk about things of substance that actually matter. But it seems that wasn't good enough for some people, was it? Well, now you know what I look like and what I sound like. You got your wish, so I fucking hope you're happy now. You won. You beat me. Congrats. I tapped out. I'm not getting back up. 10 count, game, set, match. Enjoy your victory lap. And again, for that small handful of you who accepted me even without knowing who I was, thank you. You gave me just a glimmer of hope that perhaps this wasn't a total waste of my time. Or for that even smaller handful of you who knew in it and kept my identity secret this whole time. I know it wasn't easy. I know I didn't make it easy for you. But it means a lot to me and showed me who I can really trust in this world. If nothing else, this whole experience has clued me into who my true friends are out there and who are just partisan hacks and hypocrites. Those of you who fall into the former category, you know who you are. Probably what agitates me most of all is the fact that I went through this whole process fully expecting to be hated, mocked, and ridiculed, to have crazy nut jobs try to dox and unmask me. And you'd be impressed the lengths I went to in terms of managing security and maintaining my cover. I had everything all planned out for in-person visits and everything. I even had a fucking costume planned out for if I got invited to conventions or interviews. The naivety and hubris of thinking that. A lot of people were so sure they knew exactly who and what I was. Half of them turned out to be wrong. The other half were just guessing, based on their own prejudices and biases. You can go back and look at all my public statements and see I was careful not to give away even the slightest hint or suggestion or inference, which wasn't fucking easy, by the way, having to guard every single word. If you think the thought police are bad, imagine trying to have to self-censor your ship, all for the sake of preserving your cover and carrying on with the mission. And in some cases, it really hurt, having to keep in character in front of my friends as much as my enemies, and the distance that created between us as a result. The difficulty of having to take twice as long to make content because of all the security measures that needed to be in place to guard my identity. And I felt a lot of pain, too. We're social creatures, and having to have every interaction be me looking out through a fishbowl, that takes a toll on you after a while. I went in thinking that I'd be fighting identitarians who'd be angry at the fact that none of their usual weapons worked on me precisely because I had no identity. Their accusations of ism not only deflecting off me, but me making them look like idiots for even attempting it in the first place, exposing the lunacy of their tactics in trying. I was prepared for their assaults, their vitriol, their physical abuses, and even death threats. But I wasn't at all prepared to be stabbed in the back by my own team, by the people I was ostensibly doing all this for. I was prepared to be hated. I wasn't prepared to be ghosted and ignored, or for any friendly fire coming from the anti-woke side. The people who I thought, like me, had had enough of identity politics, but turns out instead they only preferred their own personal brand of identity politics. I wasn't prepared for all the myriad other things besides demographics or politics that people seem to find to weaponize against me instead. Getting upset by the voice thing never made sense to me, since people were content to watch people like Doomcock and other VTubers. The mask thing didn't make sense because our society is currently obsessed with superheroes. Maybe it's because they all did it as a joke and I was serious, or because none of them had gone to the lengths that I had, always keeping at least one foot on familiar ground. I don't know. Someone will have to explain that to me at some point. And if it wasn't my voice or my avatar, it was my politics or my associations or my beliefs as a pagan occultist, or my particular tastes in music or other fucking bullshit details like that that don't matter to anything that we're trying to accomplish. And so it was, with a heavy heart, that I killed off that character, because it was no longer serving the purpose I'd intended for it. But only after the world had done everything in its power to kill me off first, to make sure I never got back up again. But what they hadn't counted on was the fact that I had an extra life, and so could afford to burn this one and live to fight another day. Maybe I'm projecting, maybe I'm being overly sensitive about this and not taking ownership or responsibility for my own actions, because it's not like anyone held a gun to my head and forced me to do this. I did it voluntarily, and if I'm being honest, a lot of it would have been worth it and bearable if the mission had actually succeeded, but it hasn't. I've failed you, and for that I'm sorry. Honestly, I've done a lot of soul searching over the last year or two, wondering if I just hadn't committed myself enough to the cause, if I wasn't trying hard enough, if I wasn't martyring myself enough, if I wasn't using an indirect enough approach, if I wasn't being humble enough and strategic enough such that I could have found a way to make it work if I really doubled down. Honestly, I don't know, man. I'm just one person, and I only have so much in me. At best, I can say I really felt like I tried my best, and maybe my best wasn't good enough, wasn't what the world actually needed right now. As much as I might use superheroes as a way to analogize this whole thing, to get people to understand what it's like from my end, the truth is I'm not one. I'm just me. You know, like that joke, I have Spider-Man's money and Batman's powers. The joke being neither of them has either. Nor am I really a spy or undercover operative, as apparently so many of you thought. Again, despite using that as an analogy for what this is all like, and for someone who hasn't gone through it. If nothing else, unlike a spy or a superhero, I don't have special powers or a support network or socially backed mandate and tons of resources at my disposal. Again, I'm just one guy out here trying to do what I can with what I've got to work with. And in that, I failed. But that doesn't mean it doesn't still hurt a lot. I have given probably my entire life, probably going all the way back to the age of 5. I've given of myself in sacrifice and service to others, often at the expense of myself, ignoring self-care, ignoring my own value as a human being. Some days I'm lucky if I remember to eat and do basic shit like that, because life has so thoroughly beaten me down and drained me that I have pretty much nothing left to give, and no one and nothing to refuel and support me. If you know nothing else about me, you should know that I'm the sort of person who will hold the door for you until my arm falls off. And it's up to you to walk through that door or not. But once I let go, and that door is shut, that's it. It's never fucking opening again. That's the sort of person I am, and what I'm willing to do for those whom I care about. And it's fucking hard to be that sort of person and stand there with a smile on your face in cheerful service, to be a true Boy Scout, all while getting beaten and abused by people who don't understand what it is you're doing or why. Sort of like that, holding the door for women is sexism idea, but taken to the extreme. The sheer ingratitude making you question why you even bother in the first place. And every once in a while, someone comes along and walks through, and every once in a while, one of them even says thank you. And then you remember and have a bit of energy to keep going just that little bit longer. But ultimately, it's a losing battle and becomes too much after a while until you have to let go. Because you're just one person, and you can only hold that door open for so long. Scott Adams talked about the arc of human life, how you start off as 100% selfish as a baby, being wholly dependent on others for your survival. And by the time you're an old man, being 100% selfless, ultimately giving your own life, your estate, and your legacy to the world as you fade out into your next incarnation. In this and many other ways, I feel like I've lived my entire life in reverse. Lived my life going backwards like Benjamin Button, starting out selfless, but now crossing the midpoint and realizing that I ought to be more selfish, that I ought to care more about myself and stand up for myself, and to put my own needs ahead of others that I've been neglecting, and that doing so doesn't make me a bad person. Except, you're an adult now, says the world. You're not allowed to be selfish. You're no longer allowed to have wants and needs, or to put yourself first ahead of others, because everyone else around you has needs. Everyone else around you is grown up alongside you, and they are all having kids, and we need to think of the children, and you need to be an adult for them. Your time has passed. You had your chance at all that, and you blew it. Oh, you've got regrets? You've got FOMO? Too bad, so sad. Suck it up and put your big boy pants on. Like that Pink Floyd song. And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you, no one told you when to run, you missed the starting gun. So you can't go back and relive all those missed opportunities in your life, because that would be creepy and weird. You just have to accept that you lost. You lost that time. You're never getting it back. Sucks to suck. Sucks to be you, and that's how it is. You're a poor captain, but a captain nonetheless. Never mind that no one told you when to run or not to run. Never mind that you didn't have parents or family or friends in your life with enough established credibility to prepare you for what life would throw at you. You have to take responsibility for all of that yourself. You have to take extreme ownership of all that. And don't bother asking for help. No one is willing or able to give it. Only you can figure it out. But I can't. I don't have the energy or will or drive or the knowledge or whatever it is that I lack, but otherwise need in order to do that anymore. I'm tired. I'm burnt out. I've spent the last decade trying to figure it out on my own, and despite everyone telling me, oh, how smart I am, all that intelligence hasn't been able to come up with a solution. So the truth is, maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am, or as smart as the world keeps telling me I am. Maybe this was obvious to everyone else the whole time, and I just didn't have the sense to listen. I don't know anymore. They say it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. But at some point, you can't muster the strength anymore, and just have to stay down and accept defeat. Accept that you've come across a superior opponent. and you don't have it in you to keep fighting anymore. So all I can really do right now is grieve for my life. The time I've lost, the money, the friends, the opportunities I missed out on, while everyone else is carrying on to bigger and better things. And I guess thank God for reincarnation, or that would make me feel even worse about everything, knowing that everything I'd ever done in my life was basically for nothing across a cosmic timeline as well. And having the misfortune of not having anyone prepare me for it. Maybe this is just the part of the game in which you grind and experiment and level up to pay off past karmic debts. I don't know. Oh, did you think that was the end of it? Oh, no, no, no. That's only the beginning of the story. The start of the woes. The tragedy of Marussia Dark. Yes, I know most of you have checked out at this point because you don't care to listen to me whine and lament like, woe is me. But as I said, I don't care. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me to get this off my chest, to process this ball of negative emotion, as it were. And if you care to continue to listen, if you actually give a damn about me, well, then pop a squat. We're going to be here a while yet. See, I've never been particularly bothered by death. People around me would die, and for a while I thought it was an indication that I might be some sort of psychopath, that I didn't just break down into a puddle of goo and start weeping about it like what I saw others do in the same situation. Maybe that's media and pop culture lying to me about how you're supposed to act when you grieve. Over time, I came to conclude I was probably too much of an empath to be a psychopath, since there were plenty of other times in my life in which I was a pile of weepy goo, and that maybe it was just that I was never really close with those people who died in the first place, at least not in the same way that everyone else was. I even dared to think that maybe it was closer to some sort of enlightened acceptance of death, just being a part of life in a Zen Buddhist sort of way. Maybe that's arrogance, or maybe it's a mix of both. I don't know. That said, even my apparent stoic detachment had been challenged this past year, as my family has experienced no less than 6 major deaths in the last year alone, including my grandmother of 96 who lived with us for a while, my aunt, 2 uncles, my cousin committing suicide, and our beloved family doggo. 6 deaths in 1 year is pretty heavy shit to deal with, on top of my own death, on top of all this COVID bullshit we all just collectively went through. Then, on top of that, at the beginning of the same year, coming to learn that my boss suddenly died, and my cousin, who I worked with at the time, and I were all suddenly out of a job. I don't have a car or a driver's license, and haven't for the past decade for reasons that I won't get into here, aside from saying it's a total fucking bureaucratic bullshit that put me in that position, and I fucking hate every minute of it. Topic for another time, but I bring that up only to say that between that and my chronic imposter syndrome, it's severely limited what sort of jobs I can take. Pretty much anything within walking or busing distance, and I had to contend with that while taking care of someone else for a period of 4 years, which is another story I won't get into here. But between those 2 events, plus having been defrauded out of literally tens of thousands of dollars, my financial situation has been basically as shitty as it can be for my entire adult life. But again, you're not allowed to talk about these things and how awful it feels because no one cares. And you're just supposed to take ownership of it and pay the fine, play the game, conform to society, or just makes you look weak and incompetent. And no one likes to hear you whine about being a victim, especially when there's no hope of getting justice for any of it. You just have to suck it up and keep marching forward, because that's what adults do. That's what responsible individuals do, right? It's all your fault, even if it's also someone else's fault. I may sound flip about that right now, but I do genuinely get that. And it's not like I'm sitting on my laurels. I am taking steps to try and actively improve my life. I'm just painting a picture for you of all the various components that go into what my life has been like the last 15 years, and all the unique challenges, let's say, that I've had to contend with simultaneously that perhaps some of you don't. Things that have made all this more difficult for me than they otherwise might have been, because all of them converging at once. So yeah, my cousin and I didn't have many prospects, and the fact of our boss dying suddenly meant we didn't have an opportunity to plan or prepare or get any sort of credentials or recommendations that would allow us to find similar work elsewhere. Partly because he was the sole proprietor, and maybe that's on us for not accounting that your sole employer is suddenly dying in rehab after recovering from COVID and not having an exit strategy. You know, hindsight is 2020. Won't make that mistake again. So we pooled what few resources we had and started our own company, doing basically the same thing, which admittedly hasn't been going too well. We came across some close encounters with bankruptcy a few times. I had saved up 10 grand over the course of working at that job for 3 years, hoping to use that to fix my license and car situation. But the urgency of our situation meant that now that all of that is gone into a venture that I frankly hate, but can't get out of now without embracing the loss of all that capital and being left with literally nothing. Again. So for the short term, I have to just suck it up and hope it pans out, because it's pretty much the only thing I have left at the moment financially. Some of you might be saying to yourselves, well, hang on, didn't you write and publish 3 books? Well, yes, but despite my best efforts at marketing them and literally giving them away for free at one point, it seems that basically no one has bothered to read them, let alone buy them. For those of you who did, I'm really glad that you liked them as much as you did, and thank you for all your kind words of praise about them. Maybe you have suggestions for how I can persuade your fellow readers to take a chance on it. If so, drop that in the comments below as well. Suppose some of that failure is indeed my fault for the poor decision in tying my books to this anonymous character, and thus shooting myself in the foot in terms of certain avenues of promotion, like conventions and stuff. Things that I might actually be able to do now that I'm officially unmasked. However, aside from that, I really have been doing everything I could to promote them and to get people to read them. Paid adverts, social media, guerrilla marketing, word of mouth, mass emailing book bloggers and book promoters with personalized messages, and even reaching out to some of the high-profile people I know with big channels, people from whom I hear constantly about how they're starving for new original work, how they're tired of woke remakes and rip-offs, and please won't someone just make us something new that doesn't suck for a change? And I'm right there, holding up my books going, here you are, exactly the thing you've been asking for this whole time, the thing you claim to be desperate to have. I'll even give it to you for free, just please read it. But does anyone take me up on that offer? No, not really. And it's not like they don't have time, since a lot of the people I reached out to are people that do book reviews. Meanwhile, it's hard not to feel bitter and resentful and jealous seeing other trash tier work making millions and getting tons of publicity. It's like being a kid who has to plan their own birthday party, and then you invite the entire class and have to stand outside in the rain looking through your own window while everyone else is inside having a good time without you, and no one even bothers to question where you are. let alone come outside to check on you. And of course, you can't just come out and tell people that your book isn't selling well, because people's first thought will be, oh, well, we live in a meritocracy, so the problem must be on your end. Maybe your book sucks and isn't worth my time, because if it was, surely more people would be reading it. And so you see the sort of catch-22 situation I'm in as far as that. I don't know how to ask people for help without appearing like someone who deserves to not be helped. So what can I do other than make a video like this explaining the situation? I thought perhaps it might have been because I wasn't really as good of an author as I thought. But from the handful of people that did read my works, the responses were almost unanimously positive. And I don't just mean friends and family who'll tell you what you want to hear, I mean real customers, with some people even saying it changed their lives and made them rethink what they thought they knew about everything, which, as an author, is about the highest compliment I can get, since that's exactly the reaction I'd hoped it would have and the reason I made them in the first place. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I already got my reward in the form of that compliment, and this is the universe's way of teaching me a lesson about humility and being careful what you wish for. Like that story of the inmate who wanted to write the world's best play, but he was set up to be executed. And he prayed and prayed for the for the time, rather, to make his perfect masterpiece. And right up until the point when he was facing the firing squad, that's when the universe froze time for him. And he had all the time in the world inside his head to make his masterpiece. But no one would ever see it besides him. And then a moment later, he gets shot. I don't know what's up with that, man. I tried promoting other people's stuff as well, in case maybe it was an issue with me as a personality that they didn't like, but no dice there either. Maybe it was never about the stuff I was promoting so much as the way in which I was going about all this. And if that's the case, I hope someone will come along to give me a much-needed sanity check and a kick in the head. At best, I can say it doesn't feel like that's the case, based on some of the feedback I've been given. Either way, I don't know what else I can do to fix this in the short term. Maybe it means I need to strike a deal with some publisher, but I don't really like the idea of that because it means losing creative control over the work. Maybe I just need to keep grinding to save up and go to conventions. We'll see, I guess. I also want to go back and edit the ones I have before making more, but that costs money I don't have at the moment. Money I was hoping my day job would cover, but as I said, that's currently failing as well. And frankly, the lack of enthusiasm thus far has really sucked all the energy and drive I initially had for this project out of it, which is a shame, really, because it's something that I think about constantly. Sucked it all out to the point where I'm like, why should I bother making more if people won't even read the ones I've made so far? Would I just be wasting my time? We'll see. I feel like I'll definitely return to that again in the future. I've got a lot more books in that series that need to be told, a lot of visions that need to get out of my head and into the world. But I need you people to at least meet me halfway on it, if only to help replenish my energy and drive to press on, or at least to tell me what I'm doing wrong and how to fix it, to tell me that this really is a complete waste of my time and you don't care and you'd rather I do anything else. But being ghosted and ignored means you don't even get negative feedback to tell you what you're doing wrong. You get nothing at all. Some of you watching this know I do game development on the side, that I started my own little indie outfit called Circuit Studios, which you can find on YouTube, where I do art and game dev stuff. Besides politics, I'm in a couple art and game dev circles in which I do teaching in a few Discord servers. However, that community has been running around with its hair on fire ever since AI and machine learning started to get good, meaning a lot of people have pretty much given up hope, and those places are starting to go the way of movie theaters in terms of how empty they feel at times. Not gonna lie, it's kind of depressing, to be honest. Admittedly, I'm not the best artist myself. I consider myself pretty mid-tier, so I'm not able to leverage that into a job in a market that's arguably oversaturated anyway. But I consider myself a pretty good analyst, and I do take joy in helping students, and it's sad to see those pools drying up. I thought perhaps once I unmasked, I might pour all my attention into art and game dev as an eventual way to Shawshank my way out of this financial prison that I'm in. But then, within the same week of me releasing that video, I came to learn that the heads over at Unity shat the bed with their new pricing plan. So now the entire Unity game dev community has plunged itself into civil war and mass hysteria over a single bad decision and worse communication. So much so that those of us who are diehard Unity loyalists, like myself, are even feeling completely drained. I don't know about anyone else, but it's made it basically impossible to start back up working again, even though by now the problem has pretty much been resolved. In situations where events are out of my control, I know that I can always control my reaction to the events. So I should be able to just keep working, right? And if this were the only thing on my plate, that's probably what I'd be doing right now. Just that I've felt so completely crushed by the weight of everything else that's been going on in my life that, at least for right now, I just don't have the energy to pick myself back up again and continue working. Speaking of responses, I'm honestly less mad at what Unity did than I am the backlash by the game dev community. That's not to say Unity got off scot-free, but the reaction made it far, far worse than it needed to be, all because people don't understand the meaning of words or how business and law work, didn't trust the process enough and just abandoned ship, causing a domino effect of other people panicking. All the doom and gloom and blackpilling has really just sucked all the fun and joy out of the process for me, such that I need to take a time out and recalibrate before I touch Unity stuff for a while. And again, I wasn't personally bothered by anything Unity themselves did, since it really didn't affect me. But seeing the community I love tear itself apart in the span of a week has just absolutely emotionally been devastating for me personally. In some of my discussions with other game devs, I likened it to that scene from Mary Poppins wherein the bank is trying to get Michael to invest his tuppence. Just as he's about to trust them, the bank manager snatches the money out of his hand. That was clearly an unforced error, but what made the situation worse was Michael shouting, "Give me back my money!" and creating a mass panic that resulted in a bank run and huge losses, perhaps even permanent losses for the bank as a whole, all because of a simple misunderstanding and poor communication and lack of trust. So yeah, that was a real kick in the dick that I didn't need this month. But wait, there's more. So, the same week that I release my video and have to deal with all the Unity bullshit, I come downstairs one morning to find my mother has had a stroke. We get her to a bed to hopefully rest for a while my father makes arrangements to take her to the hospital. There's not much else I can do besides try to go back to work in my office at that point. Next thing I know, I hear the thud 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 of her body falling down the stairs. I gasped and very nearly had a heart attack as I knew exactly what that sound was. I said a silent prayer begging the universe that she hadn't hit her head and died, because I think that probably would have just broken me then and there. I rushed downstairs to see her lying on the floor. Thankfully, she's alive and mostly okay. Nothing broken, no blood, but we still have to take her to the ER, obviously. A few days go by and she steps down to the ICU, then eventually to rehab. She's getting better, but I've still never seen her or anyone in such bad shape in my life before that. That sort of droopy delirium that post-stroke victims exhibit on their face, in which they're basically a human vegetable, can barely recognize you. Our entire family was heartbroken, as she's basically the matriarch at this point. A few more days go by and she has to go back to the ER, and my mind flashes back to my boss's death. It wasn't the COVID that killed him. He got over that and was recovering in rehab too, up until the point that he died suddenly. Thankfully, as of this moment, my mom's still with us and doing a lot better, but this is just one more level of shit I really didn't need in my life right now. Almost like the universe is threatening me, saying I'd better not push my luck, because there's still plenty that it can take away from me to make me suffer a fate worse than death and to wish I were dead. Not just figuratively so, but literally. Let's see, what else? Is there anything else that we can pile on? Oh, while I'm going through my own personal hell, I had the pleasure of having some random woman from my past decide to message me after several months of not speaking to me. She started off by gloating how great her stocks were going, as if to rub it in my face that I've spent my entire adult life living in abject poverty. Or maybe she was another scammer trying to get me to send her money, I don't know at this point anymore. It's not like I knew her well, we'd just been talking over the course of a few weeks. I told her a bit of what I was going through and that I wasn't in the mood right now. She then proceeded to tell me how I and my entire family were going to die and burn in hell because I'm cursed and we don't believe in Jesus. So yeah, that was fun. Suffice to say, she's not in my life anymore. Just don't understand how people could be that horrible. Why you would go and kick someone when they're down and then rub dirt in their face and piss all over their head. Maybe she's just a random psychopath, I don't know. After that, I felt so horrible, I thought I would come downstairs to get myself a cup of coffee to just try and make myself feel better from the mountain of absolute weapons-grade bullshit I'd been dealing with the last 2 weeks. Only to find out that someone had broken my favorite coffee mug. Again. This being the second time in a row that's happened, after spending hours and hours searching for a replacement online after the first time. Suffice to say, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and if this were the movie version of my life, this would have been the part in which you see me throw the rest of the mug across the room and shatter it in sheer anger and hopelessness and despair, before rushing back up to my room and crying my heart out for the rest of the scene. But the real-life version of me somehow managed to muster that whatever little willpower I had left, enough to restrain myself from doing that. Maybe it's because I knew that other people were around and I just have to deal with their anger and confusion and bullshit, and that would have been even worse. Instead, I swallowed the suckiness and went back upstairs to see if I could order a new one, only to find out that, of course, it now apparently no longer exists, meaning I either need to spend countless hours finding a new one or somehow fix this one. Meanwhile, I still haven't had my coffee that was supposed to help me feel better. I decided at this point I have no choice but to fix it. I like that mug too much just to let it go without a fight. However, I can't use super glue since putting it in the microwave will release cyanide gas, nor will wood glue work since it's not temperature regulated, and hot glue is out for the same obvious reason. So I'll have to epoxy it back together, but all my epoxy is at the shop, and without a car or license or money for Uber, there's no way to get to it until next week when my cousin comes to pick me up for work on Monday. That's assuming my cousin's narcolepsy and hour-and-a-half commute doesn't get in the way of us actually making money again, which wouldn't be the first time. But I guess that's on me for picking him as my partner to begin with, and for not having my shit in order. So yeah, that's just a small fraction of the bullshit that's been going on in my life of late. And I recognize that a lot of it is of my own making. That's not even the whole picture, by the way. I haven't talked about my various mental health issues, financial issues, relationship issues, family issues, apart from the stuff going on with my mom and my cousin, or various legal issues. Other things I've been struggling with over the past 10 years and in the past year and past month, especially. Things that have all been weighing on my heart and mind like an anchor. Again, I'm still grieving, still processing, but I think as of right now, the worst of this tempest is probably over. I've weathered the storm and the sun's starting to come back out again. Ironic that it's been raining nonstop here the last few weeks as well as I've been going through all this. But yes, I recognize I am largely to blame for all of this, and the last few days have led me to a new understanding and appreciation for all of this and more. And I can honestly say I'm mostly better now. Hopefully this gives you a sense of why I've been feeling anhedonic lately and why I felt the need to withdraw from the world for a bit, as this is only the tip of the iceberg. But getting it off my chest and out into the world does genuinely feel better. Feels like a huge weight has lifted. Maybe this starts to give you a sense of why I often say the world is a dark and dangerous, uncaring place, and how hard things have been for me over the years. Even now, I feel kind of awkward and ashamed talking about all this publicly. There's part of me that is torn between wanting people to watch this and not wanting anyone to watch. It's a lot of baggage I've been carrying while trying to climb out of this massive pit, like that scene at the end of The Dark Knight Rises that I'm only just now starting to release. Originally, I'd wanted to say all this live, but that was too much too soon. So I hope you don't mind that I had to leverage my strengths and write it all out as a script first. If that makes it less authentic, or if it actually helped keep things clear and organized, let me know. One last thing I didn't really touch on that I feel I should address is that lately I've come to realize something about myself, which is that my life has been overall pretty fucking traumatic in many ways. But I often downplay that because, hey, it can always be worse, right? You could always be blowing through a straw in a wheelchair and you're not. You could be like your mom having a stroke. But the idea that someone else has it worse doesn't really bring comfort or do anything to solve my problems. If anything, ironically, that attitude of gratitude has been an impediment to me accepting the fact that my life has been hard and that I've had to do everything on my own, and that my 120% best still isn't enough. That it's okay for me to not be okay, and it's okay for me to ask for help, and that it's okay for me to admit that my life has been brutal and horrific and full of suffering, even if others factually have it worse off. I've always been a better advocate for others than I have for myself. Part of that, I think, is because of the distance, being able to take myself out of emotions and be objective. And part of that has not been serving me well when it comes to fixing my own problems. Again, I'm torn about wanting people watching this, but at least just writing it all down and getting it out of my head and heart has made me feel a bit better. In many ways, probably the most overwhelming feeling I have regarding my unmasking is relief. That I don't have to carry that weight anymore. As I said, to those few people who've stuck by me all this time, I thank you for at least being willing to help me, even if you weren't always able to in the way that you wanted. Again, I'll probably do an AMA stream at some point, talking more about the details of this project if that's something that people want to hear. In that case, leave your questions down below in the comments and I'll add them to the AMA stream once I've had some more time to process all this. And once I've figured out what I'm going to do with this and my other channel going forward, I'll let you know. I did promise Code Monkey that I would try out his game, so that might be the next thing I do, is a stream of that and a review, or Maybe not a stream, maybe just a video, we'll see. I won't do the usual thing of asking you to do like, share, sub thing just yet because frankly I don't really feel like I have anything to offer you at the moment beyond just this frankly nightmarish window into my own life. I at the moment don't really have anything else to offer to make it worth your time and attention to do that, so I won't ask, other than to say, keep an eye on this space for when I eventually do. One life is over. A new one is just beginning. Pain is an old friend of mine, and I've come to bargain with the universe.